I never thought saving a stranger's life on a cold Tuesday morning would change everything. When I pressed my hands against his chest and breathed life back into him, I didn't know he was worth billions. I didn't know he'd wake up and look at me like I hung the moon. I didn't know he'd fall in love. If you've ever wondered whether one moment can change your entire life, stick with me. This is my story. Raw, real, and honestly still hard to believe sometimes. Hit that subscribe button because you're about to hear something you won't forget. And listen, if this story touches your heart, drop a comment below. I read every single one. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. My name is Gabrielle Thompson, and before everything changed, I was just trying to survive. I'm a nurse, 28 years old, working double shifts at County General Hospital because that's what you do when you've got student loans that could choke a horse and a mama who needs help with rent. My life was predictable. Wake up at 5 in the morning, throw on my scrubs, grab terrible coffee from the corner store, and hustle to work. There was no room for fairy tales in my world. I believed in hard work, paying bills on time, and keeping my head down. Romance? That was something I watched other people experience while I was too tired to even swipe on dating apps. It was a Tuesday in October when everything shifted. I was walking to work, same route I always took, cutting through downtown to save 10 minutes. The morning was cold, that kind of crisp autumn air that makes you walk faster. I had my earbuds in, mentally preparing for another 12-hour shift when I saw people gathering on the sidewalk ahead. You know how crowds form in the city, everyone with their phones out recording but nobody actually doing anything. That's when I saw him. A man maybe mid-30s collapsed on the concrete right outside a coffee shop. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his face pale, and he wasn't moving. I didn't think. My training just kicked in. I pushed through the crowd, dropped to my knees beside him and checked for a pulse. Nothing. His lips were turning blue and I knew I had maybe minutes before it was too late. I called out for someone to dial 911, tilted his head back and started CPR. 30 compressions, 2 rescue breaths. 30 compressions, 2 rescue breaths. 10. My hands were shaking, my heart was pounding, but I kept going. The pavement was hard under my knees. People were shouting around me, and all I could think was, "Please, God, let him live." And then he gasped. This horrible, beautiful, desperate gasp for air. His eyes flew open, these startling blue eyes, and he looked right at me, confused and terrified. The ambulance sirens were wailing in the distance, and I just kept saying, you're okay, stay with me." When the paramedics took over, I stood up on wobbly legs, realized I was late for work, and noticed my scrubs were stained with spilled coffee from the sidewalk. Someone in the crowd said, "You saved his life," but I just nodded and walked away. I didn't even know his name. The rest of that day passed in a blur. My co-workers heard what happened and kept calling me a hero, but I didn't feel like one. I just felt shaky and strange, like I'd witnessed something I couldn't quite process. When I got home that night, my mama took one look at me and wrapped me in a hug. I told her everything. She said, "Baby, you've got the gift of healing in your hands. That man is alive because of you." I tried to shrug it off, but that night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing his face, those terrified blue eyes locking onto mine. 2 days later, things got weird. A video of me performing CPR had gone viral on social media. Someone had filmed the whole thing, and suddenly thousands of people were sharing it, calling me a hero, dissecting every second. I was mortified. I'm a private person. I don't even post much on Instagram. And then the flowers started arriving. First at my apartment, then at the hospital. Expensive arrangements with cards that just said, "Thank you." I had no idea who they were from until he showed up. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was at the nurse's station when this man walked in wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. Tall, sandy brown hair, those blue eyes I'd seen filled with panic now calm and focused. He walked straight up to me and said, "Gabrielle Thompson." I nodded, confused. He smiled, this genuine, warm smile, and said, "I'm Christopher Hayes. You saved my life 3 days ago." That's when it clicked. I'd seen his face in the news before. 2-0 Christopher Hayes, billionaire tech entrepreneur, founder of some major software company. And here he was, standing in my hospital looking at me like I was the most important person in the world. He asked if he could take me to dinner to thank me. I almost said no. What would we even talk about? But something about the way he looked at me, with real gratitude, not pity or obligation, made me say yes. That dinner was the strangest night of my life. He took me to this ridiculously fancy restaurant where the menu didn't have prices, and I felt completely out of place in my Target dress, while everyone else sparkled with jewellery I couldn't afford in 3 lifetimes. But Christopher didn't seem to notice or care. He asked about my work, my life, my dreams. He actually listened. And when I asked him about the collapse, he got quiet and admitted he'd been pushing himself too hard, ignoring stress, ignoring his body. "You gave me a second chance," he said. "I don't want to waste it." I expected that dinner to be the end of it. A nice thank you, a handshake, back to our separate worlds. But Christopher kept showing up. He'd bring coffee to the hospital, these expensive lattes that my co-workers teased me about. We'd text late into the night, talking about everything and nothing. He took me on simple dates, walks through the park, little restaurants I'd actually feel comfortable in. Slowly, without meaning to, I started falling for him. He wasn't what I expected. He was kind, funny, a little awkward sometimes. He listened when I talked about the struggles of being a black woman in healthcare, about how I was treated differently by some patients and doctors. He didn't try to fix it or minimize it. He just listened and learned. My friends thought I was crazy. "Girl, what does a billionaire want with you?" they'd ask. And honestly, I wondered the same thing. But when he kissed me for the first time, under the stars in a quiet park, none of that mattered. It was tender and perfect, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope. But reality has a way of crashing in. Christopher invited me to a charity gala, and I should have known it would be a disaster. He sent me a dress, this gorgeous gown that probably cost more than my rent, and I felt guilty accepting it but wore it anyway. The moment we walked into that ballroom, I felt the stares. I was the only black woman there who wasn't serving drinks. The looks were subtle but sharp. And then this woman dripping in diamonds came up to me while Christopher was getting drinks. 30. She smiled this fake smile and said, "You must be so grateful for this opportunity." The way she said opportunity made my stomach turn. I knew what she meant. Gold digger. Charity case. I smiled back and excused myself to the bathroom where I tried not to cry. Christopher noticed I was upset and we left early. In the car, I finally told him what it felt like to be in his world, to be looked at like I didn't belong, like I was only there because I'd saved him. He was angry, defensive, but I could see he didn't fully understand. How could he? He'd never had to walk into a room and immediately calculate whether he was welcome. Things got worse when the media found us. Photos from the gala hit the internet, and suddenly we were a headline. Billionaire's new girlfriend, the nurse who saved him. The comments were vicious. People called me every name you can imagine. They said I was using him, that I'd probably faked the whole CPR thing for attention, that I didn't deserve him. Reporters camped outside my apartment and my hospital. My privacy was gone. My mama was worried. My friends were divided. And Christopher, bless him, tried to shield me, but it only made things worse. I felt like I was drowning. Then his father showed up at my apartment one evening, cold, calculated, with eyes like ice. He offered me money, a lot of money, to leave his son alone. He said I was embarrassing the family, that I'd never fit into their world, that I was only going to hurt Christopher in the long run. I told him to leave, but his words haunted me for days. I didn't tell Christopher. I carried that weight alone, and it crushed me. We had a huge fight 2 weeks later. I finally told him about his father, and Christopher was furious, at his father, at me for not telling him sooner. "I can fix this," he kept saying. But I was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of being stared at, tired of feeling like I had to prove I deserved to be loved. "You'll never understand what it's like to be me in your world," I said. voice breaking, and I can't keep pretending that doesn't matter. I ended it. I walked away while he stood there, heartbroken and helpless. And I cried the entire way home. The next 2 weeks were the worst of my life. I threw myself into work, but nothing helped. I missed him constantly, his laugh, his texts, the way he looked at me like I mattered. My mama finally sat me down and said, "Baby, love isn't supposed to be easy, but that doesn't mean it's not worth fighting for. If that man makes you happy, don't let the world take that from you." Christopher showed up at the hospital on a random Thursday afternoon. No flowers, no grand gesture, just him, standing there with red eyes like he hadn't slept in days. "I love you, Gabriel," he said right there in front of everyone. "I know I don't understand everything you go through. I know I have privilege I didn't earn. But I'm learning. I'm listening. I confronted my father. I've been donating, educating myself, using my platform to speak up. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying. And I'll keep trying every day if you give me another chance." I looked at him, this man who'd somehow become my whole world, and I realized something. Love is always a risk. It's messy and complicated, especially when you come from different worlds. But real love, the kind that challenges you, changes you, makes you better, that's worth the risk. So I said yes. I said yes to trying, to fighting, to building something together despite the obstacles. That was 6 months ago. Christopher and I are still together, still navigating the challenges of being an interracial couple in the spotlight, still learning from each other every day. It's not easy. Some days are really hard. But I haven't lost myself, and he hasn't stopped growing. We're doing this together. Saving his life that day somehow saved mine too, in ways I never expected. It taught me that love shows up in the most unexpected places, and sometimes the biggest risk is not taking one at all. So that's my story. The Nurse and the Billionaire sounds like a movie, right? But it's real. It's messy and complicated and beautiful. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that love can show up in the most unexpected places. And tell me in the comments, do you believe in second chances? Do you believe love can bridge any gap? I'm Gabriel, and I'm reading every single comment. Thank you for listening to my story. Until next time, keep your heart open. You never know what's coming.